I've been out here claiming that I created the ultimate Archviz project. Does that even exist? Maybe it could have been better. Maybe it could have been cheaper, faster, and easier to create. When creating 3D graphics and Archviz, you have to remember that there are always various different ways to accomplish the same things. It's a lot like art in that way, where the goal is always the same, to tell a story or evoke a certain emotion, but how you get there is up to the artist. Similarly, with Archviz, we have various different tools and software to arrive at the same place. Today I want to explore that a little bit by recreating my ultimate project, but this time with a different software, Twinmotion. Follow along with me as I take my original project, run it through Twinmotion, develop it, and try to arrive at a similar endpoint. And we'll see together how Twinmotion compares. First things first, we gotta import the Datasmith. And Datasmith is a very, very important part of this whole process because Datasmith translates all my V-Ray stuff almost perfectly. And it can be brought into Twinmotion or Unreal Engine 5, or you can export Datasmith from Twinmotion to Unreal Engine 5. Datasmith is just like a universal file that works in both software and translates my 3ds Max work really, really well. You can see when I import it here, it comes in pretty nicely. And as long as we're comparing different softwares, let's get one thing straight. Datasmith gives a huge leg up to both Twinmotion and Unreal Engine 5 because it means that I don't have to do everything with standard materials and do special tricks to get it to work in real time inside a Max. I can just translate it using Datasmith and it works, even if I've got a full V-Ray scene, as I've demonstrated in other videos. And as you can see, we're off to a fairly good start here. I'm using the exact same Datasmith exports that I did for my ultimate Unreal Engine 5 project, and I'm just importing them into Twinmotion, and they work essentially the same. One issue I was noticing here is that for some reason my multi-sub-object materials in 3ds Max are coming in a little mixed up in Twinmotion, and I'm not sure why. I don't remember that happening when I went and brought these same files into Unreal Engine 5, but maybe I'm remembering wrong. I'll bring up a side-by-side to see the difference between how these imports look in Twinmotion versus Unreal. Okay, so definitely you can see that some of my materials just didn't work the same way they should have, and the same way that they did in Unreal Engine 5. You can see it on the wood cabinets in the kitchen in the Twinmotion version. So I spent a lot of time in Twinmotion getting my materials right, and you can even see on the couch in the foreground the materials just kind of not there. Of course, Twinmotion has a lot of tools for materials, but I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll talk about that in a minute. Another thing you can see that's different is in Unreal Engine, I brought in all the lights, but I learned my lesson there and decided not to do it when I brought it into Twinmotion. So you are not seeing a bunch of lighting applied to the Twinmotion version like you can see in the Unreal Engine. But my first goal with this project, with this experiment, was to get the models working properly. And it's pretty awesome that using Datasmith, I just used the exact same exports that I had used for Unreal Engine 5, brought them into Twinmotion instead, and everything started to work. So the model is completely taken care of, and that's the first element of any good 3D project. Let's see how this handles the other elements of a good 3D project. Okay, as I mentioned, Some of the materials weren't assigned properly, but also I just don't like the translation of some materials as well. And I will say that this is common in Unreal Engine 5 as well. Sometimes the materials just don't look great coming straight out of V-Ray, and that's okay. There's full adjustments available in Unreal Engine 5 to make it look however I want. In Twinmotion, there isn't nearly as much control, but there is a huge library of materials that I can assign, and that's what you see me doing a lot of here. Just going in, tidying up all my materials. Here I need to add some self-illumination to my lights. But yeah, a lot of it is just a matter of assigning materials from the library, maybe doing some slight tweaks and adjustments, reassigning materials properly that got messed up, etc. And the library is great and all, it makes it super easy, and that's kind of the point of Twinmotion. But let me just say this and make this important point. You do not have nearly as much control over materials in Twinmotion as you would in Unreal Engine 5. And maybe that's a bad thing. Unreal Engine 5 materials can be confusing and complex, but you will have all the control you would ever need to make whatever kind of material you want. Here you have very limited options for how to adjust your material, but that makes it much simpler and easy to get into, and maybe that's what you want. That's something important to keep in mind. Okay, let's continue with polishing up this rendering, making it work well in Twinmotion. One thing you can see right away is that my rug didn't come in for whatever reason. This was a weird tiling issue, I think. You have to watch that if you're like me and you have a lot of real world tiling sizes in 3ds Max. When they come in here, the scale of your tile might need to be way different. Okay, what I just said is completely true, but in the end, that wasn't the issue here. This one needed to be two-sided, and then things started to work, and you'll see how the hair works in just a minute. It's pretty cool. So there it is with the fur, and you can just adjust. This needed to be two-sided too. Apparently there's a normal that was messed up or something. I don't know, just another issue with materials coming in that you might have. You can adjust the tiling and the height of the fur, or the hair as it's called. That's pretty cool. I really like that that is just built in and super easy, because doing that manually would be really difficult. A win for Twinmotion there. Okay, now let's get to scattering the forest for the outside. I've got my materials basically looking good. My model, of course, looks good. But what about scattering? So in Unreal Engine 5, I would take the Megascan's trees and just start painting them around, and it automatically adds in variation in size and rotation, and I can scatter as many objects as I want. In Twinmotion, I can kind of do the same. Like, it's not bad, but there's some weird things about it that I don't like. It's not quite as intuitive and as smooth as painting in Unreal Engine 5, but it does get the job done, and I do have a large library of trees to choose from. So here you can see I've put the trees that I want to paint into my slot, and I just start painting them around. The one thing I struggle with on here is variation within the same paint object. Maybe you guys know how to do this better than me, but I had all my trees looking kind of uniform, and I could adjust them overall in that paint object, but to get a bunch of different variation, I needed to create a new paint object for the other variants that I wanted, which I don't like. You can go back and adjust these after you paint. You can go in and adjust the density like this and the age. But it's kind of doing that on a universal scale. And so when you get down low, you can see that all the tree trunks are the same height, and you can see right through them like that. So I didn't really like those results, so I went in and made some more paint objects with different size trees and things like that to try and clean some of that up. Like I said, in Unreal Engine 5, I like this a lot better. Let me know what you guys think about that. Maybe I just suck at this, and that's my problem. Okay, I think the way to go here is actually using the scatter. That gives you the variation that I want, because it's true. Otherwise you can't get it. But let's say I scatter it. Let's drag this thing in here, delete this, and then select this and say scatter on this plane here. See, now I get nice age variation, which I like, and I can keep scattering more and more. And then I could go in and erase parts that I don't want, so I could erase around the cabin by doing this. So this would actually give me kind of what I want. However, then I'd have to scatter for this entire giant plane, which I don't really want to do. So I'm just going to leave it painted the way I had it. But that is another option, just in case you're looking to do something like that. Okay, I put in a bunch more grasses and stuff too, and tried to scatter a lot of detail onto the ground like I had in Unreal Engine. I don't find this to be nearly as good as what I was able to achieve in Unreal Engine, and I find it to be a bit clunky to place everything how I want. But in theory, a lot of the Megascan stuff is in here, and I should be able to get similar results because the Megascan stuff is what really sets it apart, I think. The only problem is, whenever I try to download Megascan stuff, it tells me to sign in, and I do sign in, and it still says to sign in. So something's broken there. I don't know what it is. I've tried to read about it. If you guys know, let me know in the comments. But long story short, I wasn't able to get the Megascan stuff to work in here, but in theory, I should be able to get all that stuff to work like I do in Unreal, and that's a huge plus for Twinmotion, the fact that Megascans is in there. Now is the time that I say thank you for making it this far in the video, and please subscribe if you're finding the content interesting, and maybe if you're excited to see me take this same project and try to do it in other software that maybe you're interested in learning about. Definitely have a lot of that coming up in the future, so please subscribe and hit the notification bell if you feel so inclined. I appreciate it a ton, helps the channel a lot. Thank you. Okay, let's talk about lighting, because we all know lighting is where the difference is made between a good rendering and a crap rendering. And in theory, we're using lumen here for our global illumination, so that's the same thing I used in Unreal Engine. We should be able to get similar results, and I doubt that the lights, like the area lights and the point lights and spotlights and all that stuff, is any different than Unreal Engine either. It should all theoretically work the same and give similar results, but does it? Here you can see me just getting all my lighting set up, and I did this in Unreal Engine too, because in the end, I didn't import my lights via Datasmith into there either for my finished version. So here I am just adding a bunch of lights and trying to get them to look nice. And I'd say the difference between this and Unreal Engine 5 for lighting is minimal. I mean, it's the same deal. Now we're going to talk about where some of the differences lie in a bit, because it's not in the technology, it's not in the capabilities of the lighting, it's actually something else that has to do with lighting, and we're going to talk about that. I think it's the biggest difference between these two softwares as far as what kind of visual results you can actually achieve. By the way, check the difference right here between standard lighting and lumen. Standard looks like garbage. Talk about a huge improvement adding lumen to Twinmotion. Okay, once all my lighting is all set up, it's looking pretty nice, I think. Then I get into the post-processing. And this is where I start to feel limited. Okay, and post-processing isn't the only culprit. It's more like post-processing shows me an overall issue with Twinmotion that I have. And that is a lack of total control over how my project is going to appear. The post-processing settings in Twinmotion are pretty basic, whereas in Unreal Engine, we have the post-processing volume, which has an enormous amount of controls, and it gives me full power to create the visual effects that I want. Twinmotion feels a bit limited in comparison. And that applies to lighting too. We don't have things like the light mixer to really dial in our lights. We don't have really high quality HDRI setups that we can do like we do in Unreal Engine 5, where we have full control over that. And the big thing that I noticed is the height fog, which was doing a lot of heavy lifting in my Unreal Engine scene. In Twinmotion, we just have really basic controls for the fog. So I can't get the same results there. And that kind of speaks to the general feeling I have with Twinmotion. Twinmotion, super simple, easy to learn, but sometimes feels limited because it's so simple. Unreal Engine is like the exact opposite of that. It is less easy to learn. It has tons of settings, tons of control, and that might make it harder, more confusing for people, but you never feel limited. You can make it look however you want to. Okay everyone, thanks for following along on this journey with me through Twinmotion and all its capabilities. And I have to say that we knew from the beginning, didn't we, that this was never going to be my ultimate project, because the cool thing about that was the interaction I added with blueprints, in my opinion. And of course, Twinmotion doesn't have blueprints. But what we were exploring here is the visual capabilities of Twinmotion to see if we could get it to look like the Unreal Engine 5 version, which I think looked really good, actually. My overall analysis is basically this. Both these softwares are awesome and useful in their own ways. If you just need to do something quick, easy, basic, and you want it to be visually really quite capable, then use Twinmotion. If you already know Unreal Engine, then maybe you can just skip the Twinmotion part, because you'll have full control and it's not going to be hard for you because you already know it. Okay, and an added benefit that's very important to remember is that Twinmotion can actually just be straight up exported to Unreal Engine 5 with basically a perfect translation. So if you start in Twinmotion because you need something quick, and then you need to add the interaction and get to the ultimate level later, totally possible. These two things together are amazing. So this has been my experience. Now let's take a look at my results. So here it is. Enjoy. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like the video. Thanks. If you've had better results or a better experience, let me know in the comments what I did wrong, why you're cooler than me, all that sort of stuff. Again, thanks for watching.